So thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me today. I think for the astute among you, you probably looked at your brochures, you looked at me, and you go, this guy looks nothing like the guy in the brochure. And if you say my name 5 times really fast, it sounds nothing like Pete Thompson. And so, what I'm hoping today, though, is to share with you guys a little bit of our perspective about what's happening with the industry and at the same time where we think this is going and the opportunities that exist. And so let me frame this a little bit for you. I think a lot of times when people get up here and talk and share their point of view, I think it's very important that you guys understand the context from which my point of view is coming from. And so for us at Ericsson, there's 2 very important things. One is what we do with consumers, and at the same time what we do with operators. And so with consumers, we have an annual study that we do every year, dating back to 1995, driven out of a group within Ericsson called Consumer Labs. And so this past year with Consumer Labs, we went and did empirical studies, quantitative, qualitative type studies, looked at over 40 countries, looked at a bunch of respondents that represented over 1 billion people. At the same time, within those 40 countries, we looked very specifically at 15 countries where there were very interesting things happening across TV and media in those particular markets. And so that's one thing that frames my point of view here. The second thing is just within the IPTV platforms business, the business I represent, today we power over 70 operator services across 30 different countries. And so we hear a lot of opinions from those operators as well in terms of what's happening in their markets, what are the types of things that we need to support from a technology platform perspective. And so it is those 2 things that come together that frame a lot of what I want to talk about today. And so consumer frustrations, I think for most of us that have been in the industry for a while, at these conferences for a while, this is not a big surprise. You look at what's happening, you look at the different ways that consumers are able to get a primary video service today, satellite, terrestrial, cloud-based, cable, telco. At the same time, there's physical media as well. There's a lot of on-demand, growing pool of on-demand. And the nice thing is there's a ton more choice across different devices, the PC, the laptop, the tablet, the mobile, in addition to connected TVs and so forth. But with this explosion of choice actually is a lot more frustration. And so in a lot of the studies that we've seen is people look at these devices, it's their login, it's their service, but these devices have no awareness of each other. These devices are essentially siloed experiences. And so I experienced this in my own home, as you guys probably do as well. My household recently got into a show called The Good Wife. Good Wife, I think, is in 4th or 5th season now. It's out of a broadcaster in the U.S. called CBS. And if you think about what's happening with The Good Wife, you have a lot of the latest episodes on your linear guide. It's either in your DVR, catch-up TV, what have you. At the same time, there's episodes in Hulu. There's episodes in Hulu Plus. There's episodes in iTunes and Amazon, and Netflix, and so forth. And so to go ahead and piece this all together just so that we can catch up is a very frustrating experience. Now, I work in the industry, so I take the time to do that. But back home in Silicon Valley, my wife is cursing my name because I'm here enjoying my time in London while she's at home, having to wait till I get back to figure out which remote control for which box in the home to watch a simple show that she just very much enjoys. And so when we think about what the consumers are telling us, both kind of explicitly and implicitly, it really is at its core this one personalized experience, this one seamlessly integrated experience. And when we talk about integrated, we really mean integrated at several layers, right? And so there's the integration of the interface across these different video consumption devices I have, integration across that navigation, some type of consistent navigation across the different devices I have, integration of the service sources as well, the content, regardless of which source or which service it's coming from, how does that get integrated for me? Integration also at the discovery layer. How do I discover what I want to watch? How do I think about finding it without having to go through a whole maze and an Excel spreadsheet matrix of what's where? And then an integration at the payment and the billing layer. Now, what underlies all this, though, is a flexible offering that is able to keep up with the modern technology and these two-way connected experiences I already have in my life, right? And so typically what happens with the video services today is it's very kind of stair-step type of innovation. You get to that innovation, and then it stays there for a while, and it takes a while to go ahead and break to the next step and the next step. Whereas when you look at a lot of the other connected devices in our personal lives, it is about a continuously improving experience. It is about a continuously improving UI as well. And so when I get used to that, and then I come back to my primary TV experience, even though if we're able to accomplish a lot of this aggregation integration we're talking about, it needs to be underpinned by a service offering that is able to move at a pretty nimble pace as well. Now, at the same time, the operators don't have it easy today in today's world also. And so if you think about what is happening today, there's a whole myriad of things that the operators need to deal with. And so starting first and foremost with content rights. And so over 10 years ago, I was spending a lot of time doing content negotiations and licensing deals with a lot of the major Hollywood studios. And at that time, when we were thinking about licensing, we had one category of content licenses, and it was called interactive entertainment. And interactive entertainment at the time covered everything from video games to rights on mobile devices to rights on interactive TV. And now these days, that type of structure has increased to 10 plus windows, 10 plus different ways of licensing that same piece of content. And so the operators are dealing with this. At the same time, they're thinking about how to curate that content, how to package it up, how to aggregate that different sets of content to launch their service. And they think about how to launch their service across different types of devices, not only new devices that's kind of popped up in the last 2 to 3 years, but also device categories going forward that we don't currently anticipate today. And then there's the, how do I create intelligence? How do I create visibility about what's happening across my service? And that's the analytics layer, so that I can go ahead and put subscription revenue against it. So I can go ahead and put advertising revenue against it. And then being able to deliver it over a whole myriad of networks, both wired and wireless. And so we realize that today, besides all the stuff that the consumers are asking for and frustrated with, at the same time, the operator world is very, very complex. And so where this leads us to is some very key inflection points. Most of us have been around for a long time, and there's a lot of talk of what needs to happen in this industry, where are the opportunities in this industry. And for anybody who's kind of been through innovation cycles, a lot of times the when is just as important as the if something's going to happen. And the when is really a combination of when different vectors are coming together. And for us, when we look at the different things that are happening in the space right now, the different things that are happening in technology and the different layers of innovation, we see a lot of inflection points coming together. And so we know, given the perspective that we come at it from, that Ericsson is very much has a long legacy in mobile broadband infrastructure and wired broadband infrastructure as well. And so we see the rise of video across those networks, no surprise to most of us in the room. At the same time, there's a rise in devices. If you kind of just think about the pay TV model, up until now, the model has been on-premises infrastructure serving anywhere from 1 to 3 set-top boxes in a home. And now that set of devices has proliferated exponentially. At the same time, there's the rise of cloud capabilities. You walk around the show floor, you walk around any of these conferences, and you'll be hard-pressed not to run into someone that's doing some type of cloud-based innovation. And when you think about what's happening in cloud-based innovation, there's a lot of work just around video to getting it into the cloud, managing it in the cloud, distributing it from the cloud. A lot of that innovation today has been done with on-demand content, but more and more so also linear content. And so with that, what's happening is it's really pushed the cloud infrastructure to have a way more investment on an aggregate basis globally than what is happening on the more traditional private server networks. And so that's driving a lot of economic efficiencies, is driving TCO down. At the same time, what you're seeing with modern software architectures based in the cloud is a lot of agility, a lot of flexibility, a lot of responsiveness to dynamic loading that's being worked out in the cloud. And so that obviously begs the question of, now, what parts of it, how do I think about how this would affect my service offering? Another inflection point that we see is around rising cost for operators. And so for operators today, when we even look at just the base that we serve, to land these video services across all these different devices, they're running anywhere from 4 to 7 different back-end platforms just to manage and distribute the service offering, the video service offering. And so obviously that creates a layer of complexity as well. And then enveloping all this is how the consumers are looking at the more kind of pure web-based type offerings, the speed of innovation that they're seeing across those offerings, both in the user experience as well as the user interface, and they turn to our TV services and they expect the same. And so this actually seems like it could be very dire for a lot of us in the room, but we actually think the operators are a pretty key linchpin in all this. For 3 very general reasons. One is we believe fundamentally it is very strategic to have a relationship with the broadband networks. The operators in this room, a lot of them take on different profiles, but for the most part, they're network builders, they operate the network, and there is a huge strategic advantage of being aligned with that broadband network. The second thing is in all the countries that we operate in today, operate TV services in today, almost without exception, the operators are huge investors in that content ecosystem through content licensing, through packaging, promotion, and so forth. And so that allows the operators to have a content depth and breadth to their library that is unparalleled. And then the last major area is around consumer acquisition, the support infrastructure. As video becomes more a primary whatever service becomes a primary video service for that consumer, that's where the acquisition comes into play. That's where the support infrastructure becomes very, very important. And this is a scale business, and this particular aspect is very much around scale. And the operators today, they manage that scale by using that same support infrastructure, or same infrastructure around acquisition support to support their double play businesses, their triple play businesses, their quad play businesses. And that is also another area that we believe is very fundamental, and as services become the primary video service in your home or in your life, this is the part that cannot be ignored. And so where does this all lead us? At the end of the day, there's something that we call pay TV at web speed. And there's a very fundamental aspect to that is very different than just saying, hey, look, I have a platform today, let me add HTML5, or let me do something with the cloud. When we think about pay TV at web speed, we actually think about it very fundamentally about how do you take the inherent benefits of pay TV with its quality of service, with its depth and breadth of content offerings, and how do you marry that to the personalization, the interactivity, the multi-screen that you're seeing from the OTT side. And so that means both taking a look at the traditional current technology platforms and technologies that are used in pay TV, and how do you bring those forward in a way where it's a lot more agile and nimble. At the same time, you're looking at traditional web-based technologies, open source technologies, and how do you take those technologies and make them work in a scaled way on a global basis in a pay TV world, in the network carrier grade type of situation. And so this is where we believe the opportunity is. If you can marry those two, then what you allow the operators to do is to operate their service akin to what the large global web services do today, how Facebook runs their services, how Amazon runs their services. When you think about how those services are run, it is really around the ability to push out new features every day, every week, if you wanted to, and allows things like service segmentation. How do you think about A/B testing? How do you think about hyper-targeted advertising in that context? And so for us, this is where we think the industry is going. We have a very strong point of view on what are the investments that are required to bring these two worlds together. And so with every vision, there is a fundamental rethinking of what this means for our business. And so when we think about that, there's a lot of issues of what are the things we could do differently, what are the things we should do differently given these new capabilities. And so even at the operations network layer, where is the value add? For each of us in the room, given this new model, given where all this is going, we have to ask ourselves, what is the value added role that I play in this new world? And so even at the network layer, there's the infrastructure layer, the platform layer, the application layer, and the service operations on top of that. Do I still need to do the whole stack? What parts do I fundamentally need to keep within my organization? What parts could I potentially partner externally with? At the same time, when I think about service marketing, how do I think about an agile service marketing role when I have a platform that allows me to do something like that? How do I think about feature rollouts and the pace and the cadence at which I roll out new features, and how do I go ahead and communicate to my consumers in that type of model? That's something that is not traditionally done today in the more pay TV world. But these are the types of questions, these are the types of conversations that allow us to shift in industry and push us to the next step of where we all need to go. Now, in my brief time here today, I want to kind of share with you at a high level how we're thinking about this. When you kind of pause and take a step back, you hear at its highest levels in the industry, when you hear when you look broadly, besides just the people in this room and the place we occupy in the value chain, when you look broadly and you talk to media companies and you talk to CE companies, there's a few layers of innovation that people talk about a lot. They talk a lot about content innovation, content rights innovation. They talk about the innovation that's happening at the business model layer as well. And then there's a lot of talk about innovation that's happening at the device layer. Well, there's another area of innovation that we believe is fundamentally important. That's the technology layer. That's the underpinning that allows a lot of these other things to happen. And so as I wrap up my brief talk this morning, I want to go ahead and leave you guys with the video. From our perspective, when we think about in an always connected world where there's screens all around you, new device categories coming on every day, and most of them will be device enabled. In this networked society, if you will, how do you think about what a video service is like? And thinking about what are the underpinnings, the technology that needs to be resident in place to enable something like this on a nimble, agile, and flexible pace. Thank you.
What was that show about fashion? The one with the blonde hostess? Yes, Style Nation. Add that to my personal channel.
What's trending in sci-fi?
It's almost time.
I know, I'm psyched. How long has that guy been up there?
Liftoff was 9 months ago.
Let's watch it again.
We better get going. Download to my tablet.
Show me women wearing red dresses. Okay, search for clips of women wearing short red dresses with accessories. Oh, show me that second clip. Resume Style Nation. Call me a taxi. Save for later.
Hey, Dad.
Hey, Dave, how are you?
You guys ready to join the party?
We're ready.
All right, Dad, let me sync the broadcast.
How you guys doing? 5,